Welcome to the Only People Matter talk series, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Stories. I'm Charlotte Townend, coach, owner and founder of Only People Matter Limited. Founded in 2018 and inspired by my beautiful grandma, Pamela Frances Townend, who instilled in me the importance of love and kindness towards all people. Her words spoke to me throughout my life and created my soundtrack. You can have all the money in the world, but in the end, only people matter. We are on a mission to spread her message and help people reach their goals and create a more emotionally connected and accepted society. Ordinary People, Extraordinary Stories is a talk series that I've created to offer and dedicate a space to the community so that we can hear their stories. We hear from celebrities, professionals, makeup artists, fitness gurus, you name it, we've heard it. But what about the people that go unnoticed? What about the people that don't have a platform? What about their stories? Now, more than ever, we need to unite and we need to come together so that people don't feel alone. We are in this together. This series is currently being recorded online, but soon enough, I'm hoping that I'll be in the studio so that I can meet people for real. So my first guest ever on the talk series, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Stories, is Mr. Daniel Harvey, my long-term friend and inspiration in life, my true soulmate in so many ways. Hi Dan, how are you?
Hi Charlie, I'm doing really well, thank you. Thanks for having me as your first guest on your series as well. I'm honoured to be here. Thank you for such a warm introduction. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, I'm very good. Hottest day of the year, so, you know, just trying to cool down. But yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah, really good, thank you. Really, really good. I'm so excited to hear what you've got to tell us and everybody watching. So yeah,
Nice.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and could you let us know what you do for work, etc.?
Yeah, of course. So as Sham said, my name's Dan. I'm a 33-year-old cisgendered homosexual mixed race male who lives down in Brighton for the past 16 years. I studied down here at university, loved the community, loved the vibe, so kind of set my roots here. Then I met my partner, now husband. We've been together 10 years. And for my day job, I work in marketing. I'm a marketing manager for an Italian espresso machine company called Lama Zoccolo.
Nice. Oh, and you can make a good cup of coffee. This is good. You just come close enough. Next time I'm in the studio and you make me a cup of coffee. Thank you.
Deal.
Yeah, so thank you. So what age were you when you came out and how was that for you in and around that time?
Okay, so I came out when I was 15. I came out at a family party. Not going to lie, I'd had a bit of Dutch courage, just a little bit of Dutch courage, a beer or two, and decided to come out to my mum, who just said, I know, which was great because obviously it shows how supportive and how much she knew already. I did kind of want a little bit dramatics, but I'd rather take the support. But even before coming out, I don't know when I first knew. I think a lot of like queer people would say this, but definitely a young age. I think the earliest I could tell that I wasn't like normal would have been maybe like 5 years old or so, just certain feelings towards boys that I kind of, society was telling me wasn't okay. But yeah, I definitely knew at a young age. But the coming out process was okay for me in the grand scheme of things because of my family being really supportive. But what was quite interesting about when I came out is society at the time. So I'm 33 now, 15 when I came out, so 2001-ish. And at the time, a bit of legislation was still in place in education, so something called Section 28.
Could you explain what that actually is?
Yeah, sure. So Section 28 was a piece of law and legislation from the Conservative government at the time that discouraged the promotion of homosexuality in educational settings. And one thing I really remember vividly from my second year at secondary school, so year 8, was our headmaster of all people, the person in the most senior level of power and authority, coming up to a friend of mine who had long hair because he was a bit of a rocker, and told him to cut his hair because it promoted homosexuality. Now, I don't remember a lot of secondary school, to be perfectly honest, but that memory is always really vividly stuck with me. It's kind of crazy to think that that law didn't even get repealed until 2003. So, it feels like we've come a long way, but it's really not that long ago that we started to make such positive changes. But that's kind of what was going on at the time, I'd say, when I came out.
Wow, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Like, so much has changed, but then yet there's still obviously so much more to do. But but even that, just with what you were saying about your headmaster, like now that wouldn't happen. So that in itself is a single event. I can't see that would happen now.
Yeah.
Agree with that.
Would I? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it does still happen. I think it's similar to families disowning their children or other family members because of their sexuality or gender identity. I think that's kind of crazy. I also think it's very irresponsible for anybody within that position of power to say something like that. But also, if a teacher ever stands by and sees people getting abused or bullied because of their gender or sexual orientation or just how they are in general, I think that's a real neglect of the position of authority you've been given. So yeah, I hope it doesn't happen as much, at least, anymore.
Yeah, maybe I was being a bit naive there, actually, because when you were just talking about that, I was thinking actually it probably depends a lot on place. It depends a lot on the age of teachers and stuff like that, and you've got new teachers coming up through the next generation, and that's really interesting. We hear a lot of stories in the news about bullying and harassment and exclusion of LGBTQ plus individuals. What particular challenges have you faced within your lifetime?
I would have undoubtedly faced certain, should I say, little aggressions and stuff and awkward situations because of my sexuality, also being a mixed race guy as well. I faced, small bits of racism here and there. But I'm very much a glass half full kind of person. So I look back at the experiences I've had and try and compare them to what others have had and others that I've heard and read about as well. And I think in the grand scheme of things, not to use the term lucky, because being able to thrive and survive shouldn't be a thing of luck. But my experiences have been, relatively plain sailing in the grand scheme of things. And I think that's because of who came before me. I take my hat off and have like the utmost respect for the icons and pioneers who came before me to make sure that me growing up as someone born in the 80s, that I was able to be more accepted and be able to fully realize myself. So it's always worth looking at someone like Peter Tatchell, who's been a British gay rights activist who has been an icon since as long as I can remember. The first time I saw him on telly, I was maybe 11, and I thought he was so badass, and he still inspires me. I got to meet him at Pride last year. He was awesome. And then people like Larry Kramer as well, who recently passed away, who's an activist and author. I'll give you some links for people to follow up and read some of his books. And then obviously trans icons and trailblazers like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, like all those people who really worked so hard and really put up a fight so I didn't have to as much. I've got nothing but the utmost respect for people like that, You've got to remember who came before you, know your history.
Apart from your own experiences, did you ever witness any other challenges that anybody else went through?
I would say from my own experience, even though I class myself as like an out loud, proud person, there's definitely times when you kind of have to be on your guard a little bit in certain scenarios. And I do hate that. I hate that I find myself in situations and I mute some of the camper, more feminine side of myself, depending on where I am. So that would be a challenge that I guess you class as almost like a little microaggression, that kind of thing. You just have to be on your guard and maybe change certain things about yourself for you to feel safer. And I do hate that happens. But again, I think it's because, like I said, I've had quite a relatively privileged experience in kind of the queer spectrum. My husband is older than me, Jean-Yves. He's French. He's awesome. Like I said, we've been married 3 years together, 10. but he's a constant inspiration for me. I love being able to learn and hear from his experiences. So on a really positive note, I love hearing about the nightlife, like back in like the late 80s, 90s and stuff. It sounds so much better than it was now. But hearing about the hardships that he would have gone through and his friends would have gone through, especially surrounding like the AIDS epidemic, and the way that there was no real, there was no action from the government and government bodies to actually sort this out. It is very much a community grass-led effort to make sure that people are addressing this situation. And I think that's crazy. I think one of the hardships is being that you can be so out and proud, but if you've still got societal factors working against you, of course you're going to find times when you check yourself, even subconsciously. And then 2 minutes later, you look back and be like, why did I, add a bit of like a swag to my walk just because I, felt intimidated in a certain situation? It is ridiculous, but it's there. I can't deny it.
Yeah, and although you could call it small, the small things often add up, and then all of a sudden you could easily, quite quickly, I would imagine, find yourself becoming a version of yourself that you don't recognise. I know, like from research that I've done over the years, is that often LGBTQ plus communities can start to feel like they're not within their own body because they have to try and identify outside of what is them. How does that kind of feel to you, like hearing that?
I would say that I haven't really had that experience where I felt out of my own body, so to speak. But if we are going to talk about hardships that people in the community have faced, I think it's very, very, very important that we address the trans rights, especially at the moment. Like, we talk all the time about LGBTQIA+. The T very often is like an afterthought for many people. There's a think tank called ILGA, and they did this rainbow map that they've been doing. So they tally up all the countries in Europe and they put them in order of where's the safest place to live if you're part of the family. I'll make sure that you have a link for that as well that you can include in this. So we were very near the top, if not at the top, up until 2015. And since then, we started to slowly fall down. And I think last year, 2019, we were placed 9th. And it's not attitudes towards gays, lesbians, bisexuals. It's trans people. It's the way that we don't have those support systems in place, or aren't willing as a society to really understand the trans experience. And I have so much respect for people who go through that journey and really live their absolute truth. It's one thing to try and do that through your own kind of sexual identity, but to be able to go through that with your gender as well, just utmost respect. And I can't believe that as a society, we seem to be going backwards. However, there's lots of good things about the internet. There's lots of bad things about the internet, but I must admit, seeing the drive and the passion of the trans activists and their causes and stuff has just been insane. And I really hope that, a lot of cisgendered gay, lesbian people like myself can also, put our fight in there as well, because, we're responsible for each other at the end of the day. So yeah, like you said, we've got a long way to go. Way to go.
We know that kind of family rejection can cause all sorts of problems in terms of mental health, increased suicide, homelessness. How important is it for you to integrate families into the support of the LGBTQ plus community?
Fundamental, I'd say. I can't even imagine where I'd be without the support of my family. I don't have the biggest family, and like I said, very women heavy. I'd say my immediate growing up was my sister and my mom, who were two of the strongest people I've ever met. Absolutely incredible. And having that support system in place,
yes.
Exactly. Having that support system in place just really allowed me to be me. I think I mentioned it earlier, people who get disowned because of the way they identify, it's really sad. It's really frustrating. I find it a waste of energy, a waste of love, a waste of connection. And I can't imagine not being able to have that support. I know I've got friends whose family don't necessarily speak to them because they've come out, and, my heart goes out to them, because it can really question who you are and how you identify and what your self-worth is. saying that though, that's not to say without a blood family that you can't, thrive. You really can. A lot of queer people have to go out and create their own families. It's a very common thought. They do have to go do that and build that. And you can get, the same amount of love, support, respect. Blood is important, but I mean, you can build that, it can be just as strong. It really can be just as strong. It's about finding the right people and having those right connections. Like, God forbid, if I didn't have my family, you are my family, and I still feel as close to you as if we were, blood relatives. So you can find that support system. You can find that network. You can really survive. You really can, by having the right people around.
Yeah. It's like you can survive and thrive. Do you know what I mean? You just need the right people around you and the people that are going to accept you. And, like when I think of my family, I think of like a grounded kind of feeling. They always I always feel quite grounded. I'm very fortunate. And sometimes when I go to Pride in Brighton, I get that same feeling of like, I just feel really grounded, and I just feel like for a day or a weekend, you can just completely be yourself. And it is that, like you said, creating your own family within that space.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously you've been down to Pride many a times to celebrate with all of the Brighton lot, and you know how close we all are and how it does feel just like a big family party. It really does.
Yeah.
But even having a strong family support system and really good friends and stuff doesn't mean that you can't go through issues through the queer experience. Like, even, being married and having really good friends and stuff, like I've engaged in hedonistic, risky sexual behaviors that are kind of come to be expected from the community. There's been times when I haven't felt comfortable explaining that to like my straight friends because I think they find it hard to empathize. There's times when I haven't wanted to talk to my queer friends because I've been embarrassed about it. I eventually have, and I've been able to learn and grow from those circumstances. But just because you've got a great support system in place doesn't mean that there's other kind of, again, societal kind of factors that can still make you get in your head a bit and want you to do self-destructive things, so to speak. But being able to talk is just tantamount. It's so important.
Yeah, it's multifaceted, isn't it? You've got so many different layers and levels of where you can gain acceptance from, or where you can find that rejection sometimes.
Exactly.
But just you have to just keep strong, keep true to yourself. And it's just about making sure that I think as well, I have to do it a lot, just keeping in check with how you actually feel, because you could go on a spiral and all of a sudden you just feel a bit rubbish and a bit down, and you can, it can something can just trigger it, or, it can happen over a long period of time. But I think one thing that I've learned to do is just to really have like, weekly or monthly check-ins, like, how do I feel? Do I feel okay? What could I do to improve my life, or what can I do to make myself feel better? And that spans across everybody, regardless of gender, sexuality. That's everyone.
Exactly. And I think I'd say that I definitely experienced this with you, but sometimes, you can talk to a friend and you're giving them advice where subconsciously you're actually giving yourself the advice, because it's so much easier to be able to impart wisdom, but so much harder to actually take it on board. So I find being able to be really upfront and honest, they're the best friendships, they're the best family members who you can do that with, but you subconsciously take on a lot of your own advice,
But same-sex acts can carry the death sentence in at least a dozen countries still, and it's only still legal for same-sex marriage to happen in 28 countries. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's heartbreaking. Like I mentioned earlier, it's crazy to have, I find it crazy that people have such issues about the way that people identify within themselves. It's my truth, not yours. It is insane. And it's one of those things that even if you feel like you're safe in this, like, westernized bubble and stuff, and you feel really secure being in the UK, being, a gay man, cisgendered and all of this. I think even when you look at other countries that have, regressive laws in place, or it's punishable by death, like, that still makes you check yourself, because it's like, hold on, even though I'm fine here, my queer brothers and sisters just across the pond aren't. And what does that say about who I am? So it's all connected to the whole like collective experience, I think. I don't really have too much to say besides the fact that I find it absolutely crazy. And, you know, the most that I can do to help better the cause is make sure that I show up to protests and do, you know, online activism and donate to the right causes to make sure that people who are really experiencing hardships in those places are able to, you know, hopefully come out of it and see that there's, you know, some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
There's some really good online like Instagram channels and charities that you can follow as well that shine a light on experiences that like the queer community are going through in different countries. I would recommend on Instagram, We Are All Out. They're a charity, but they do a great job of being able to show different kind of challenges facing the queer community in different countries. And at the moment, they've also brought the Pride season online with an event called We Are Distanced. So you should definitely check that out. I'll give you a link, but they're running different panel discussions, film screenings and stuff all around Pride Month. And you know what, that's, you know, COVID-19 has been it's caused such an earthquake in a lot of people's lives. It's been crazy. One of the sad things I think is having a whole season of Pride cancelled. You know, it is a big party and people have a lot of fun and they get dressed up and, you know, so you come down and people get to be who they want to be for that time. But it's more than that. Like it's visibility, it's exposure. We get to, you know, do what we want. It's a shame that people are, like, some people only feel that over the course of the Pride weekend, but to have a whole season of Pride cancelled is just such a shame because so many people get to make those, you know, connections there or get to have their first memory of being able to be such an out and loud person. I know the first Pride I went to was insane, absolutely insane. I loved it. So to have that experience taken away for people this year sucks, but there's a lot of stuff online that's keeping communities connected, which is good.
Yeah. No, that is good. And in relation to the you know, the laws in other countries, what do you think that's down to, or what do you think could help move that forward within other countries?
Oh God, that's quite a big thing. Like, I'm a political person, but sometimes I'm quite conscious of me saying how I think we could change that. I feel really crass saying it, but I think religion has a big part to play in it. Education as well. The fact that society in general is heteronormative and white and largely male. So the fact that, you know, just being a queer person shakes that system up. It's fear as well. And it's so much easier to invest in fear than it is to invest in love and hope. It really is. It's such a sad thing, but we're all guilty of it. And I think it's that if you get the rhetoric right and you scare the public enough into thinking like the gays are coming to convert your children, then it can cause a big, you know, shift in cultural opinions that make you think that it's a terrible thing to be queer when it's really not. It's great. Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's like, it is like you say, it's like, where do you start? Because there's so many different and so many huge barriers to changing that in certain countries that, you know, that it may never change. It really may never change. But I guess what we can do is on a localized level is make sure that we're offering that support within our communities, and also, like you say, you know, donating and finding charities in countries where they do support gay rights and they do support the LGBTQ plus communities there. You know, and like you say, we'll supply all the links and the references that Daniel's given during this show. So yeah. Perfect. But that's not to say that the UK, like I said, is a safe haven. Like, we've still got a long way to come. I know that we got marriage equality. You know, that was a great thing, obviously. But then you have like Theresa May, who towards the end of her prime ministership, she publicly said that, you know, the LGBTQ plus community has an ally in life in me. And then a week later, Northern Ireland voted on whether they were going to make gay marriage legal, and she abstained from voting. So it's like, you know, if you're really going to be an ally, you know, step up to the plate. So just little things like that. I think we're all too well and good thinking that we're fine. Don't take these rights for granted. You know, it was only in, I think, 92 that the World Health Organization declassified homosexuality as a mental illness, and only in 2019 did it declassify being trans as a mental illness. Yeah. So yeah, it's those little things. Like I said, it's the big societal structures that are in place that you sometimes pay attention to, and it makes you feel like you've gone a couple of steps back.
Yeah, because I know when I was studying my degree, and this was in 2017, just after Brexit, and there was a part in my module where hate crime had gone up against the LGBTQ plus community of about 147%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that just shows how volatile even our community is in terms of your community. And yeah.
I think, the past 4 years have been a rocky ride for the Western world, I'd say. But I think it's galvanized a lot of people, myself included, who may not have been as not politically aware, because I definitely have been, but just embracing my inner activist, which I need to do more of. But I think I'm going to look at that as a positive that's come out of this, although that it's shined a light on some horrendous homophobic, transphobic, racist ways of thinking. It's also made a lot of people realize, hey, we're not standing up for this. Like, not in hell's chance are we standing up for this. And it's really gotten people to fight for causes they believe in. Just hopefully it's not a case of fear being an easier thing to adopt than love, and we're able to, boost up the love and push down the hate. But you've got to fight for it,
Yeah, definitely. And I often I find that when we're in our most uncomfortable state, that's where the magic happens. That's when we start to grow and we start to think outside the box. And we have to be a bit uncomfortable in ourselves sometimes to have that drive forward. I agree. If you're sitting like this and not really looking outside of your own world, then yes, you'll be comfortable, but you're never going to be growing. You're never going to be like expanding as a human. And I think it's so important, isn't it? It's like, it's not nice. Like, nobody's saying that it's nice to feel uncomfortable, but I often, if I feel uncomfortable, I try and put myself even like further in it a little bit, just for a while, just to see what comes out, really. Because quite often, that's where I've kind of spurted forward, and I've seen a lot of my clients spurt forward like that as well.
Yeah. Challenge yourself, just add a bit of texture to your story, Would you rather a plain old beige Mac, or would you rather a Technicolor Dreamcoat, Charlie?
Are you referring to my Mac that I had when we were younger?
Quite possibly, but that's another story.
My lovely Mac. What is your online experience? And do you have any tips for anybody experiencing hate crime online?
Okay, so I wouldn't say that I'm the most engaged person online. Even I work in marketing, so I do have to obviously have my head buried in it a lot for my job. But with regards to kind of getting into discussions and conversations online, I don't so much do that on my own personal accounts. I do, however, spend more time looking at some amazing queer personalities and following them online, because you get to see the hate that they experience from being, activists and being out and proud. For example, Munro Bergdorf, who's a Black trans activist and actress, Black trans activist and model, who's absolutely amazing. And she is such a beacon of light and support, and is so, galvanized behind the cause. But the abuse that she gets online is absolutely insane. But she always manages to, you'll have to follow her. I don't want to ramble on too much and let people take away from looking at her kind of story. But then there's another writer and community organizer based in New York called Adam Eli, who I think is amazing. And he's always highlighting abuse online, and the way that he responds to it is just full of love and light and being the better person. And I kind of made reference to this earlier. He's Jewish, and he adopts a sentiment from the Jewish faith within his own queer identity that I absolutely love and resonate with. And it's queer people anywhere are responsible for queer people everywhere. And I think if we could all pay respect to that and remember that, I think that would drive the love forward more. But like I said, I'm not, overly active there. I watch others and stuff. And again, following people like All Out and being able to see what they're doing to combat online and physical hate is absolutely amazing. There's also, I've been reading about a platform called Yubo. I don't know whether you've heard about this, but it's mainly targeted towards Gen Z, so younger than us. but it's a social media platform specifically for making friends and building communities. And I've been reading that that's been a really good lifeline for a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community, because it's been a really good way to converse and connect. And I must say, credit where credit's due. And I said this earlier again, there's lots of negative stuff about the internet. There's a lot of hate out there. And I think it's good to check the hate sometimes to make sure that you're not just in an echo chamber of similar opinions. But the internet is a great tool for connection and personal growth and personal worth. And I think, albeit there's a lot of hate on there, if you can successfully filter out all the negativity and be able to focus on all the positives there, it can be such a, vital tool in being able to make your life experience more fulfilling.
Yeah.
I think I rambled a bit there, but I think you get what I'm getting at. I'm trying not to exert any of my energy on too much negativity at the moment, unless it's going to drive something positive forward.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is about like cutting out the dead wood and cutting out the things that don't serve you. Using online as it's like, and I've had it before. I've had periods where I'm like, I just need to come off it, and that's absolutely fine. But then what I've worked out over the years is it's not just about coming off it, but it's about managing it better and having a better relationship with who I'm following, what I'm following. And I think that's just so important, especially for the generations coming up. We grew up in an age where we didn't have stuff like that. Thank goodness. Else there would be so many YouTube videos of you and I making up dances. But I think now we need to make sure that the children that are coming up and they're using it constantly, and it's basically a part of their body, that this part of their body, they're using it wisely, and the things that are being input into that system are positive as much as possible.
Yeah.
So,
but we were both like, thank God that we didn't have the internet when we were growing up. But again, for me, being queer, it could have been a real good positive tool for me. There may have been things that I struggled with when I was younger that I was able to find an online community that could have given me certain answers or advice a lot earlier. You just made me think, actually. I remember meeting gay people for the first time, my auntie's friends, and how amazing that was to realize that there was someone there like me. And maybe I would have experienced that a bit earlier if I'd been able to converse with people online who were going through the same thing that I was going through.
Okay. So it's just using it responsibly, using it for the right reasons, not engaging in the hate, and if hate off the shoulder and you get on. Easier said than done, though. And
100%. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, and it is a massive, issue that we do have to tackle. So what do you think the community needs from professionals that are helping people that are struggling with their sexuality?
I think that it needs good education. I think you need to be fully versed in what you're able to talk about and be able to make sure that you can give the most clear, level-headed support possible without ever minimizing experiences that people say they're going through. I also think resources for those professionals is so important. I mean, budget cuts to services that can really help the community have undeniably faced a proper culling over the past 10 plus years with a certain government in place. I think that's very, very important. I know for a fact that Dean Street Medical Centre in London, which helps people who need medical treatment, especially people who need mental support around issues with chemsex. So chemsex is where gay men tend to take drugs over the weekend. They might meet up and go to a sex party or something on Grindr, and then they'll take certain drugs such as methadone or MDMA or a mix of those. And it can feel really good because it could be amazing sex, but it could also be really terrible because if it's not checked properly and you might not have the right support systems in place, it could be a bit of a downward spiral. And something like Dean Street was able to give out support and advice to these people. And then I think in 2018, because of the cuts that they had, they went down from seeing 350 people a day, available appointments, to I think 75. So you think how many people are cut out from having that service to try and help them with certain issues that they're having. So sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, but that was just one little thing to think of, like mental health services being cut. That is so important because not everybody has supportive friends and supportive family. I think another big thing as well that I only realized recently when there was a petition going to stop it, which is terrible because I feel like I should have known this, but conversion therapy is still technically legal in the UK, which absolutely blows my mind.
So for anybody that doesn't know, what is conversion therapy?
Okay, so I've been lucky enough never to be suggested to do conversion therapy or been put into conversion therapy, either voluntarily or forced. But essentially, it's a form of therapy to put people into to try and cure the gay away. So that could be through a myriad of different ways of doing that. Some really brutal, some very mentally damaging. And it's a terrible, terrible thing to have in place because you can't, from my own experience or my own beliefs, you can't cure the gay away. And it just breaks my heart to think there's people that would want to cure the gay away, you know? Again, I do not take for granted the experience that I've had and how I feel about myself being a gay person. I'm very proud. I've already said this. So to know that that is still going on absolutely breaks my heart. I know that Stonewall in 2015 did a survey or did a body of research called Unhealthy Attitudes. And they found that 1 in 10 health and social care staff have witnessed other colleagues express the belief that sexual orientation can be cured. So, you know, that was in 2015. I'd like to see how it's progressed over the past 5 years. But if you've got people in a position of power when it comes to administering the right mental and health care, that's scary, you know? So again, to go back to what you said, I think what professionals need is proper education, proper resources, proper funding, and making sure that if there are areas that work against making people feel better for who they are, that has to be culled, you know?
Yeah, and like, you know, as a therapist and a coach myself, you need an understanding of different genders, different sexualities, how people identify, so that you can walk into that room and it doesn't matter what someone comes in with, you're not going to judge, you can empathize or sympathize, or you can look at it from their perspective, and instead of trying to change them, you can empower them. Therapy, it's called. So you affirm their sexuality and you encourage and empower them to move forward in the right directions, rather than trying to change fundamentally who they were born to be. Like playing God, isn't it? A little bit conversion therapy. So, you know, it's like, I completely agree. And I just was always so shocked that you never had to have any training on that, unless you specifically kind of went out and did your own research, which is what I did. And I've been really involved in this line of work anyway, and you know, I've always tried to keep myself as up to date as I can. But yeah, I was shocked it wasn't mandatory, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you feel like it should be. You really do. Hopefully that is something that gets, you know, applied more, because like I said, with us going down in the rainbow map into 9th place now because of our attitudes towards the trans community, hopefully if we can get more health professionals understanding that experience more, at least to be able to impart the right support for people, then it's only a good thing. It's only better for society because we're all mentally healthier, you know? And, you know, we know that we need good mental health right now because it's been a ride.
Yeah, it's been an interesting 2020. It's been an interesting 4 or 5 years, hasn't it, really? But yeah, 2020's been a wild one.
I just hope that we look back and it's not like, oh, remember COVID-19, remember Brexit, I remember the race riots, I remember discussions on this. I hope that we actually look back and go, God, that was a year that we really had positive, you know, a seismic shift in public opinions and attitudes for the better. I really hope so, but I can hope all I want. I need to make sure that I do my part in driving that forward. And you can hold me to that, Sham. You can interview me again sometime and tell me how I've stepped up beyond what I currently do in the, you know, yeah.
And do you know what, like, you would be such a great advocate for it as well, you know, like your positive outlook, but your deep understanding of others and your like pure love for other people is just, yeah, it's, you know, it's just what the community needs. So
thank you,
keep
because
forward and just keep doing what you're doing.
yeah, I hope to prove myself more. Like I said, there's things that I do, but there's things I'd like to visibly do more. So yeah, check in with me soon.
Going back to kind of like you on a personal level, if there was one thing in your journey that you would change, what would it be?
Well, if there's anything I could really change, there's times when I've kicked myself for not being more who I am. Definitely more when I was younger. I do feel like I'm very secure and very out loud proud. But there were definitely times when I was a teenager that I just wished that I'd, you know, not like changed who I was at certain times and been able to, you know, almost, you know, put a proverbial middle finger up to people and be like, no, this is who I am. And that's a really, you know, a sucky feeling. It doesn't have to just be a queer experience thing. You must have experienced stuff where you've looked back and been like, why didn't I say that? Why didn't I stand up for myself, you know?
Yeah. When you're a teenager, you just, it's that you're not sure of yourself, are you? Regardless of gender and sexuality, generally we're not sure of ourselves at that age. You'd be very lucky to be really sure of yourself at that age for many different reasons. You know, and the youth community, that's another, you know, that's another whole big part of the LGBTQ plus community that needs to be, you know, needs to be nourished and needs to be encouraged.
Yeah, I think sometimes you can't help but have that feeling when you are queer because you've just been grown up to kind of be able to adapt who you are in certain situations. And I still hate that there's times when I can be in a situation and go to grab my husband's hand and I'll still check myself before I do it. And I hate it. And it's only after the fact that I've realized that I've done that and sussed out the situation that I kick myself for it. And that's something that, you know, I'm being hard on myself because I need to change that, I need to address that and be more comfortable in it, because I know that if I was to get any, you know, heat for it, I'd like to think that I have enough in my arsenal to be able to stand up to myself and stand up for what's right. But again, a lot of that comes down to society. So without putting a lot of the blame on myself, it's also, you are just naturally built to adapt and camouflage in certain scenarios. But I like to think that that is a very tiny, minuscule part of my experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad there wasn't much you could change. And I'm glad you didn't say, I wish I'd never met Charlotte Townend.
No, definitely not that.
So I'm so sure there are many, but can you tell me some of the positive things and experiences that you've had as being part of the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, you're right. There has been many good experiences. Like I said, my first Pride. In all fairness, every Pride season is amazing and it is a highlight of the year, and it makes me so proud to be able to see Brighton and all other cities and stuff across the country and globe come out in full force. That's always an incredibly positive, proud moment. Another one would be the first time I ever went on the gay scene. It's amazing to be like I think I was 15, 16 when I first came down to Brighton, and I still remember so vividly going into my first gay club and, you know, hearing the music and seeing the vibe and seeing the guys and the girls. And that is such a positive experience for me, especially because I went away with two of my friends, Nick and Laura, who were 3 years older than me, and they were lesbian, and we were able to go and have this magical experience in Brighton and then come back again on different New Year's and stuff. That's always been a really positive experience. But I guess one of the most positive things that I've experienced would be being able to publicly declare my love for my husband and be able to get married in Brighton 3 years ago and just have the best celebration ever. And really just, you know, being able to be with someone like that and define it on our terms and just have a great marriage. I've been so grateful for that. And again, not taking that for granted, because it's a right that we've only really just recently been not even given the fought for it. But yeah, I'm incredibly proud that I got to do that, and that, you know, his mom, who's in her mid to late 80s, who is just a total icon. Like she showed up to Pride last year, like full rainbow flag. You know, she's got me on her arm dressed as like a bolero with hot pants on, and she's just, you know, we're together having the most amazing time. And the fact that I got to have like all you guys there, and you know,
incredible that day. It was one of those moments where even now when I think about Jean-Yves' mum being there, it's like goosebump worthy, you know, like it's just that she just completely embraced it, and it meant so much to see you being so like just so happy and just with her, and yeah, it was a great experience, as for sure, up there.
Yeah, but no, that's definitely up there. But you know, I think, you know, I've talked about the support I've had from family and everything and friends. That's been amazing. But something I wish I'd said a little bit earlier that I hope you don't mind me addressing now. But I want to talk about how important like pop culture has been to me in my queer experience, and how important exposure and representation are in media for queer people. I still really vividly remember watching Madonna's Immaculate Collection on VHS and seeing the Vogue video, and I would have been like 5 years old, and just being able to know, seeing the dancers, like I know that's who I am, like I know that. I remember being able to watch Queer as Folk in '99, so I'd have been 13, and being able to see those characters portrayed on screen was incredible. I came out in 2001 because you'll remember this, Sham, Brian Dowling had won the second series of Big Brother, and being able to see someone be so camp and himself and be able to become this like hero of the year, it was just like, well, no, I can definitely come out. Like, look at the reception he's got. And I just think representation and exposure is so important, and has really helped me be comfortable.
Yeah, Will Young, that was another one, Daniel.
Will Young as well, again. But when he came out, it was like, yeah, you know, it's those little things that build up.
Yeah, and it was amazing. It was amazing. You were obsessed.
Yeah, I was obsessed. But it gives you license and agency, I think, to even... yeah, to be yourself even more. And then, like, if we're talking at the moment about the fact that, you know, there has to be more, there has to be a shift in attitude towards the trans community, being able to watch TV shows like Pose or Legendary that's airing on HBO at the moment, like, I think having that visibility is amazing. And I know that Calvin Klein recently did a campaign called, Calvin Klein recently did a campaign called...
That's when you start getting old, when you start adding the end of words.
Having a boogie in my Calvin Kleins. Yeah, but Calvin Klein just did a campaign called Proud in My Calvins, and they worked with lots of queer personalities, including someone called Yari Jones, who's a black trans queer lesbian, and she's on a billboard at the moment along with other queer pioneers as well, and that's just incredible to see. And even if, you know, just being able for children who at the moment maybe internalize those feelings, to be able to see it so proudly plastered on a billboard in like New York, you have no idea what that means to someone who's queer. And yeah, it's incredible. And I really hope that we continue to see gay stories and gay narratives and, you know, queer characters be a real, you know, it's not just a trend at the moment. It's something that we continue to see in, you know, pop culture and media. And there's obviously a thirst for it because, you know, those shows are some of the most watched on television. I know that RuPaul's Drag Race is the most watched TV show in America between 16 to 24-year-olds. And they end every single show by telling people to register to vote. So the impact that must have is amazing. But also the fact that RuPaul's Drag Race has never really had an openly trans person on the show says something. They've had people who've come out as trans afterwards. They've had contestants like Peppermint who didn't tell the producer she was trans before she got on the show because she didn't think she'd get cast. Like, that's crazy. And I think a show that has become such a big fixture within the community, to not be able to cast trans people on that, it says a lot. But to go to the positives, there's lots of great queer representation out there, and RuPaul's Drag Race really is good queer representation. It's just, let's elevate it more, you know? And one thing that I'll give you in the notes as well, for anybody who wants to ever go back and look at the story of queer representation in cinema, I highly recommend a book and documentary called The Celluloid Closet by Vito Russo. it had a massive impact on me when I was 18 years old, and it still makes me cry. So I'll give you that link to include in the notes. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Definitely. Daniel, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I always love seeing you, but honestly, you are such an inspiration. Keep doing what you're doing, and I am going to check back in on you. I'm going to make sure that you do the things that you said you do. And yeah, let's just keep pushing this positivity and empowerment for the LGBTQ plus communities.
Thank you, Charlie. And like I said, I've been honoured to be your first guest on Only People Matter. So I wish you all the best with the platform, all the best with the series, and yeah, keep spreading the love and the positive vibes and helping people, because I know that you do that on the daily. So love you long time.
Love you too. Mwah.
Ciao. Bye.
If we want to live in a world where everyone is accepted without exception, we need to support the LGBTQ plus community. My chosen charity for this talks episode is Stonewall, who empower the LGBTQ plus community to be their authentic selves and live the lives they truly deserve. Their website is www.stonewall.org.uk. Thank you so much for joining us, and remember, only people matter.